All right, everyone. Shall we get to the first time?
We shall.
Let me get on here. Go ahead and talk about this first.
So this is a big change in energy, but there was a shooting in Brooklyn, New York. A man in his 20s was holding what people were saying looked like a gun. It ended up being a metal pipe, but when police officers responded to the 911 calls that they were getting, they shot him immediately. Didn't yell, hands up, didn't yell, drop your gun, none of that. And people in New York were upset. This man was a community figure in the sense that, yes, he was mentally ill, but he was just a presence in the community. He'd always walk around saying, hey, can I help you with this? Can I clean your that? Just a pleasant guy. And so people were upset that this happened to him, not knowing all of the details. Now with all the details coming out,
so you
the
see
question
right there
is,
on the screen, this is
should we be protesting?
Seen.
Exactly.
Right. So this is,
kids right there.
you know, this is probably private security video in front of these stores, or maybe the city, or maybe through the city, but you could see what prompted the 911 calls.
Look at that.
Aggressive behavior that clearly, in my eyes, looks like a gun. And the way that you point something like that to somebody's face, it would be the action. Yeah, it's threatening. So obviously they had to call the police to respond to do something about it. And you know, the knee-jerk reaction is
another unarmed black man in this country is dead. Easily could be the headline.
Exactly.
Some headlines say that.
But I think when you see the
34,
video,
I'm sorry.
When you see the video, you could clearly see why the police responded, and immediately. I mean, this one's different. This one's just different. I think.
Right. And when it
I
comes
think
to
many of us, maybe not all, okay, but many of us would agree if that was you walking down the street, and if that's you right there with the hoodie, and someone did that to you, and if an officer saw that, exactly, there you are with a kid, okay? So, yes, mentally ill, having an episode.
Right.
Brandishing not a weapon, but something that clearly looked like a weapon.
Right.
I think this situation, I think people are seeing this one differently, and not all of us, obviously.
No.
And the fact that, yes, it was not, in fact, a gun prompts a lot of questions. Let's figure this out. But that video, is, to me, is very frightening. I mean, you're walking down the street with your kid, and that happens.
A lot of the people on social media are saying, this is the time. If we're going to protest about it, we should protest it now because the energy is there. And I just don't know that this is one of those times that that protest is warranted.
Right.
And that's our question for you guys. Do you think the protests are warranted in New York? Because a lot of people showed up.
Right. But there has to be a gray area, you know, oftentimes when you have situations like this, because that same headline matches the headlines that were coming out about Stephon Clark more than 2 weeks ago, an unarmed black man dead at the hands of police officers with, again, unarmed, meaning he didn't have anything. And to their account, it looked like he had a gun in his hand.
Right.
It ended up that it was just a cell phone. That's according to the investigation right now. And we all saw the video, but a different reaction, not just because it's local, a different reaction nationally, internationally, all over the internet than we're having with this one. So I think once you tie in a story like this and just put it into that movement, then does it weaken that movement, right? And so
I don't disagree with you. But we have Ashley Reed here that's saying it was unwarranted. They shot him 10 times. And I think that they fired many more shots than that, and a few of them actually hit him.
Right.
But Ashley Reed, I have a question for you. Aside from the shots fired, do you think that the protests are warranted given the information we now had? The posture that he was in, presenting the pipe, do you think it's still worth it? That's my question.
And what would you have done in that situation in terms of calling police? I mean, it's hard to say, what would you do if you were the police? Because it's like, well, we aren't trained like police officers, so I hate to put myself in their shoes because, I don't envy their position of being in a place where I am having to make these decisions in the blink of an eye and then go, okay, maybe that was, maybe they justify it sometimes, maybe they don't. But at the end of the day, what's done is done in that moment.
Right.
Go ahead, Rob.
I think, you know, we hear a lot about the number of shots fired, and I think that that's important. But we, as not police officers, we, I think, view that differently than a police officer would. And with my understanding is if you're a police officer and someone is threatening you and you draw your weapon, and it's that moment, you keep firing until the suspect is completely incapacitated and has no chance for comeback. Mason has That's the training.
That's their training. They're taught to shoot to kill.
Yeah, exactly.
Shoot to injure.
Right, exactly.
A lot of people have problems with that.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe in the future they reanalyze that and discover that maybe there is some sort of moment where you can incapacitate the suspect. They have a chance to live, which is great if they're innocent, obviously, or if they are guilty, they have a chance to be, take it through the court system to try and figure out exactly what happened. But I think we are thinking immediately, way too aggressive, way too many shots fired, that there's something sinister about that. But I think I think they're reacting according to their training. I'm not trying to say it's right or wrong. I'm just saying, we tried to do some research here at ABC 10 and on the board, and I don't have full knowledge of this, but what I saw on the board was that the average officer-involved shooting involves more than 20 rounds. So I think that there is something about, with their weapon that they have, I don't know how many, I think it's 10 or 12 that they might have, in there, that they just basically empty their weapon because they want the threat to stop, as they see it.
Right. So I think a lot of people are drawing parallels between this officer-involved shooting and Joseph Mann, the 51-year-old mentally ill man in our area, in NorCal, that was shot down holding a water canister and a knife. And people are saying he wasn't wielding it like crazy like this one, but the number of shots fired and the reaction that we're speaking of are just too close. The similarities are so clear that the next step in progression is making sure that what Mason was saying, maybe we don't shoot to kill anymore. And that's, Ashley Reed says she is going to march until her feet fall off to make sure that something happens about this.
Good, and that's what they say, right? As long as it's peaceful protesting, that's what, you have that right here in America. And that's the beauty in our freedom, is that people aren't going to agree with us, and that's okay, but you stand strong for what you feel is right. But others will say, why does it always have to be peaceful? And what I mean by that is not going out and hurting people or injuring people, but what some people say is peaceful and what some others would say is peaceful are different things. Once yelling and holding signs, to some people, that's not peaceful. Other just stay quiet. That's a silent protest. So there are different iterations of it. So I applaud those who aren't harming people, but who are out there letting their voice be heard. And sometimes it takes rattling and shaking a community. Sometimes, and some will agree, that it takes shutting a freeway down to get a point across. Like, no, we're serious.
I mean, the biggest changes in American society revolved around protests.
The result of
peaceful protests that were not small, not quiet, but loud and filled with people and powerful, and the energy was there, and that energy is here and it is now. And so I feel like a big change has to come from this, because you can just, I don't know, I feel it.
Well,
I feel it all over.
We may see it soon. A bill was introduced to try and change the language on how officially the police interact with the public and when they can use deadly force. So that's something that's actionable. It's presented. It will go through the motions, and we will see maybe even fairly soon if anything comes of this.
And how it affects law enforcement moving forward in this country, because each state, and this is across the country. What happened with Stephon Clark happened here in our neck of the woods. What happened with this guy who is now dead happened, on the other coast. So how is NYPD different than SACPD? And, do they all need to be on the same wavelength if they live in such different communities? Like the way in which you interact with your people, should that differ state to state? I don't know. These are all questions. And we had Kamala Harris, who was here last night, and she had the conversation with Stephon Clark's grandmother, and I haven't had a chance to fully listen to all of it, but I do know that she has that same message of the change. It needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. And so we'll see where all of this goes. But
she's one to listen to, because people have a lot of eyes on her as maybe one day could you run for that big office? And the question is out there.
Yeah, but she's a very strong presence, and she supports her point of view very well. She's always outspoken early, and she's only been in the Senate for a short period of time. I think it's just 2 years so far of a 6-year term. Yeah. So she may be, she's got an easy out as people ask her that. I'm just getting started. I've got a lot of work to do. But yeah, a lot of people are looking at her.
And she has deep political roots in her family. Even her niece is the woman behind the Phenomenal Woman T-shirt campaign.
Which
I don't know if
so
you've seen them.
This week. Did you see
huge. Robin Roberts had them on. Her name is Mina Harris, and she went to Harvard Law. She went to Harvard Law actually with one of my sorority sisters. That's how I know her. And she has been marching for all sorts of change for women. And so you just know that family, when there is a big issue coming up, they're going to keep talking about it until something happens. It's just the way they are.
Those shirts. I remember thinking to
They're
myself,
everywhere.
because wasn't it Maya Angelou's, wasn't it on her birthday? Everyone was
Oh, I
posting.
don't remember.
I think it was this week. It was sort of on the same breath.
Okay.
The same day it was celebrating her, and then those Phenomenal Woman shirts. I was like, where do I get me a Phenomenal Woman shirt?
Yep.
It's like, you got to be part of that
Oh, you can order them.
crew. But those pictures, I'm seeing all celebrities, so I thought
Yeah.
that was really cool. You know, you get people behind the movement, and you can
It's
order
strong.
them. Good to know. I didn't click the link to order.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so what do we have in
With the
here?
comments there. I'm sorry. I wish I could
James
see your
Butler,
comments. I
James
can't.
David Butler says that at the end of the day, is it more important for the criminal to go home or the person trying to make our world safer? That's the question he's asking. And then Ashley Reed followed up by saying that they are the same, and hopefully it'll clarify. The NYPD shot an elderly woman with a bat in her own home, and she was killed. So she's saying there are a lot more stories that we don't necessarily hear of
Right.
that are issues and speaking to the same problems.
Thanks so much for watching. If you want to see more stories like this, just click subscribe.